The rain was cold against Maya's skin as she stood outside the hospital entrance at 2 in the morning, her scrubs soaked through, and her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She had just finished a double shift in the emergency room, 16 hours of saving lives while her own felt like it was crumbling. The automatic doors slid open behind her, and her best friend Rachel emerged, still in her nursing uniform, concern etched across her face. "Maya, come back inside." "You're going to catch pneumonia," Rachel said, draping her jacket over Maya's shoulders. Maya shook her head, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "He told me he loved me, Rachel. 2 years together, and he told me he loved me right before I found the engagement ring in his drawer. Except it wasn't for me, it was for her. For his coworker he swore was just a friend." Rachel pulled her into a tight hug. "I know, honey, I know." "How could I have been so stupid?" Maya's voice cracked. "I gave him everything. I worked these insane shifts to help pay for his business degree. I believed every lie, every excuse about working late. And the whole time, he was planning a future with someone else." What neither of them noticed was the man standing just inside the entrance, partially hidden by the large concrete pillar. Ethan Morrison had been about to leave the hospital after visiting his grandmother in the cardiac unit when he heard the conversation. He had frozen in place, not wanting to intrude on such a private moment, but something about the woman's voice, the raw pain in it, had stopped him from walking away. He could only see her profile from where he stood, but even in the harsh fluorescent light and pouring rain, there was something striking about her. Not just her appearance, though she was beautiful despite her obvious distress, but the vulnerability she was showing, the genuine heartbreak. In his world of carefully calculated business moves and people who wanted something from him, raw emotion like this was rare. "You're not stupid," Rachel said firmly. "He's the idiot who lost the most incredible woman I know. You're brilliant, compassionate, and you deserve so much better than someone who doesn't see your worth." Maya pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I just feel so empty, like I gave away pieces of myself and I don't know how to get them back." "You will," Rachel promised. "It's going to take time, but you will. And one day, you're going to meet someone who sees exactly how amazing you are, someone who would never dream of taking you for granted." Ethan felt like an intruder hearing these words, but he couldn't seem to make himself move. He watched as the friend led the crying woman back toward the entrance, and he quickly stepped to the side, pretending to be absorbed in his phone. They walked past him without a glance, heading toward what he assumed were the staff locker rooms. He stood there for a long moment after they disappeared, the conversation replaying in his mind. Then he shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. He had no business getting involved in a stranger's life, no matter how much her pain had affected him. He had his own problems to deal with, namely the fact that his grandmother's health was declining, and the board of directors at Morrison Pharmaceuticals was pressuring him to make decisions about the company's future that didn't sit right with him. Ethan pushed through the doors into the rain, heading toward his car in the parking garage. But as he drove home to his penthouse overlooking the city, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman's words. "He told me he loved me." The betrayal in her voice had been palpable, and it stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years. 3 weeks passed before Ethan found himself back at the hospital. His grandmother's condition had worsened, and he was spending most of his free time at her bedside. Margaret Morrison had raised him after his parents died in a car accident when he was 12, and she was the only family he had left. The doctors were saying she needed a specialized cardiac procedure, but there were risks, and at 86, every surgery was a gamble. He was walking down the corridor toward her room when he saw her. The woman from that rainy night. She was standing at the nurse's station, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, reviewing a chart with intense concentration. In the bright hospital lighting, he could see her more clearly. She had high cheekbones, warm brown eyes that held a mixture of intelligence and kindness, and a spattering of freckles across her nose. She looked tired but professional, completely absorbed in her work. Ethan slowed his pace, suddenly unsure of himself. He wasn't used to feeling uncertain. In boardrooms, he commanded respect with ease. He made million-dollar decisions before breakfast. But something about this woman made him feel like a nervous teenager. "Mr. Morrison," a nurse approached him. "Your grandmother is asking for you." "Thank you," he said, but his eyes were still on the woman at the station. "That's Dr. Chen," the nurse said, following his gaze with a knowing smile. "She's one of our best emergency physicians. Your grandmother is lucky to have her consulting on the case." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "She's consulting on my grandmother's case." "Oh yes. Dr. Chen specializes in emergency cardiac care. Dr. Patel brought her in because of her expertise. She's been reviewing all the options for Mrs. Morrison's treatment." He nodded slowly, processing this information. Then he continued to his grandmother's room, where he found Margaret awake and looking surprisingly chipper despite the tubes and monitors surrounding her. "There's my boy," she said, her voice weak but warm. "You look troubled." Ethan kissed her forehead gently. "I'm just worried about you, Grandma. Don't be. I've lived a good, long life. Whatever happens, happens." "Don't talk like that," he said, sitting in the chair beside her bed. "You're going to be fine. We have the best doctors working on your case." Margaret studied him with those sharp eyes that had always seen right through him. "You've been working too hard. When was the last time you went on a date? Had some fun?" "Grandma, this isn't the time to worry about my social life." "It's always the time to worry about that." "You're 32 years old, Ethan. You should be out there living, not just working. I don't want you to end up alone." Before he could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. Dr. Chen entered, and Ethan felt his breath catch. Up close, she was even more striking than he had realized. She had a gentle confidence about her, the kind that came from truly knowing your craft. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Dr. Maya Chen. I wanted to introduce myself and discuss your treatment options." Her voice was calm and professional, showing no sign of the heartbreak he had witnessed weeks ago. "Please call me Margaret, and this is my grandson, Ethan." Maya's eyes met his for the first time, and he saw a flicker of something, recognition perhaps, though he doubted she remembered seeing him that night. "It's nice to meet you both." She spent the next 20 minutes explaining the procedure in terms they could both understand, outlining the risks and benefits with a straightforwardness that Ethan appreciated. She didn't sugarcoat the dangers, but she also made it clear she believed Margaret was strong enough to handle the surgery. "I've assisted on dozens of these procedures, and I'll be in the operating room with Dr. Patel," Maya said. "I can't make promises, but I can tell you that you'll be in excellent hands." Margaret reached out and squeezed Maya's hand. "Thank you, dear. I can tell you care about your patients. That means more than you know." Maya's professional demeanor softened slightly, and she smiled. "I do care. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure this surgery is successful." After she left, Margaret turned to Ethan with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Now that's a lovely young woman. Grandma, she's your doctor, and she's single. I could tell." Ethan sighed, but he couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. Leave it to his grandmother to try matchmaking from a hospital bed. The surgery was scheduled for 2 days later. Ethan barely slept the night before, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. He arrived at the hospital at dawn, dressed in jeans and a casual button-down shirt rather than his usual suit. There was no board meeting today, no shareholders to impress. Today was just about his grandmother. Maya found him in the surgical waiting area, holding a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. She was in her scrubs, her hair tucked under a surgical cap, and there was a determination in her eyes that gave him confidence. "We're about to take her back," Maya said, sitting down beside him. "Do you want to see her before we start?" "Yes, please." She led him to the pre-op area where Margaret was already sedated but still conscious. Ethan held her hand, fighting back the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "I love you, Grandma," he whispered. "Love you too, my boy. See you on the other side." Maya placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "We'll take good care of her." He looked up at her and their eyes locked. In that moment, he saw the same compassion and strength he had heard in her voice that rainy night. "I trust you," he said, and he meant it. The surgery took 6 hours. Ethan paced the waiting room, made phone calls he didn't remember, and drank enough coffee to fuel a small army. When Maya finally emerged through the double doors, still in her scrubs with her mask pulled down, he jumped to his feet. "She did beautifully," Maya said, and the smile on her face was genuine. "The procedure went exactly as planned. She's in recovery now and all her vitals are strong." The relief that flooded through Ethan was so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. Thank you so much." "You can see her in about an hour once she's more alert, but I wanted to tell you right away that everything went well." Without thinking, Ethan pulled her into a hug. He felt her stiffen in surprise, then slowly relax. When he pulled back, he realized what he had done and stepped away awkwardly. "I'm sorry, that was inappropriate." Maya's cheeks were slightly flushed, but she shook her head. "It's okay, I understand. This was a stressful day for you. Can I buy you a coffee or dinner? Whatever you have time for, I'd really like to properly thank you." She hesitated and he could see the conflict in her eyes. "That's not necessary, Mr. Morrison." "Ethan, please call me Ethan, and it is necessary, at least for me. My grandmother is all I have. What you did today, what you've done for her, it means everything." "I was just doing my job." "You do your job exceptionally well, and I'd really appreciate the chance to say thank you properly." Maya bit her lip, considering. "I have to check on Margaret first, make sure she's settled in her room and comfortable. But after that, maybe a quick coffee in the cafeteria." "Perfect." An hour and a half later, after Ethan had seen his grandmother and confirmed for himself that she was truly okay, he met Maya in the hospital cafeteria. She had changed out of her scrubs into jeans and a simple green sweater that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Her hair was down now, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. They got their coffee and found a quiet table by the window. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan found himself uncharacteristically nervous, unsure how to start a conversation with this woman who had saved his grandmother's life. "So," Maya said finally, "you're not what I expected." "What do you mean?" "Well, I knew Margaret's grandson was successful. She talked about you constantly before the surgery, very proud. But I guess I expected someone more, I don't know, uptight. You seem pretty down to earth." Ethan laughed. "I can be uptight, especially in board meetings, but my grandmother has a way of keeping me grounded. She's special." "I could tell that right away. Patients like her, who stay positive and strong even when facing scary medical procedures, they're my favorite part of this job." "How long have you been a doctor?" 4 years as an attending. I did my residency here at Mercy General and stayed on after." "I love emergency medicine. Every day is different, every case is a puzzle. It can be exhausting and heartbreaking, but it's also incredibly rewarding." Ethan watched her as she spoke, noticing how her whole face lit up when she talked about her work. This was a woman who had found her calling, who genuinely cared about making a difference. It was refreshing and attractive in a way he hadn't expected. What about you? Maya asked. What do you do? I run a pharmaceutical company, Morrison Pharmaceuticals. My grandfather started it 40 years ago, and I took over as CEO 3 years ago when he passed away. Her eyes widened slightly. Morrison Pharmaceuticals. You develop cancer treatments, right? Among other things. We're currently working on several new immunotherapy drugs that show a lot of promise. That's incredible. Your work saves lives too, just in a different way than mine. I like to think so, though sometimes the business side of medicine can feel pretty removed from the human element. You get to see the direct impact of your work every day. I'm usually stuck in meetings talking about profit margins and FDA approval processes. Maya tilted her head, studying him. But you care about the work itself, not just the business. I can hear it in your voice. I do. It's important to me that we're not just making money, but actually helping people. That's not always a popular stance with the board of directors. They talked for over an hour, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Maya told him about growing up in San Francisco with her immigrant parents, both professors at Berkeley, and how she had always wanted to be a doctor. Ethan shared stories about his grandmother, about learning to run a company while still grieving his grandfather, about the pressure of living up to a legacy. It wasn't until Maya glanced at her watch that she realized how much time had passed. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I have to get home. I have an early shift tomorrow. Don't apologize. This was really nice. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. They stood, and there was an awkward moment where neither of them seemed to know how to end the evening. Finally, Ethan extended his hand. Thank you again, Dr. Chen. For everything. Maya shook his hand, her grip firm and warm. You're welcome, and please call me Maya. As she walked away, Ethan found himself wanting to call after her to ask for her number to see her again. But she was his grandmother's doctor, and that felt like a line he shouldn't cross. At least not yet. Margaret recovered quickly, much to everyone's surprise and delight. Within a week, she was moved out of ICU and into a regular room. 2 weeks after that, she was ready to go home, though with strict instructions to take it easy and attend regular follow-up appointments. Ethan visited every day, and more often than not, he found Maya checking on his grandmother. Sometimes it was clearly part of her rounds, but other times he suspected she was stopping by just to chat. Margaret had that effect on people. Your grandmother is plotting something, Maya said one afternoon, pulling Ethan aside in the hallway. There was amusement in her eyes. What do you mean? She keeps asking me personal questions. About my hobbies, my favorite foods, whether I'm seeing anyone. It's very sweet, but also very obvious. Ethan groaned. I'm so sorry. She has it in her head that we'd be good together. Does she? Maya's expression was unreadable. I told her to stop meddling, but subtle has never been her strong suit. Maya was quiet for a moment, then said, For what it's worth, if the circumstances were different, I don't think I'd mind being set up with you. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Different how? Well, for one thing, I'm your grandmother's doctor. That feels ethically complicated. And for another, I'm not really in a place to date right now. I just got out of a pretty terrible relationship a few weeks ago. So she had been through a breakup. He thought back to that rainy night, to the pain in her voice. I'm sorry to hear that. It's for the best. He wasn't right for me. But I'm not ready to jump into something new. I need time to figure out who I am on my own, you know. I understand. But for what it's worth, I think you're pretty amazing. Maya smiled, and there was a hint of something wistful in her expression. You're not so bad yourself, Ethan Morrison. The day Margaret was discharged, she made one final request. I want you both to come to dinner at my house next Friday. A thank you meal for Dr. Chen, and a chance for me to cook in my own kitchen again. Grandma, you're supposed to be resting, Ethan protested. "I'll rest after dinner. Besides, I'm making my famous lasagna and it would be a shame for you to miss it, Dr. Chen." Maya laughed. "That's very kind, but you don't need to go to any trouble. It's no trouble at all. Please say yes. It would make an old woman very happy." Maya glanced at Ethan, who shrugged helplessly. "She's not going to take no for an answer." "Okay," Maya agreed. "Friday night I'll be there." The week leading up to the dinner felt strangely charged for Ethan. He kept thinking about Maya, about the way she laughed, the passion in her voice when she talked about her work, the kindness in her eyes when she interacted with patients. He knew she had said she wasn't ready to date, but he couldn't help hoping that maybe, given time, something could develop between them. He arrived at his grandmother's house early on Friday to help with preparations, only to find that Margaret had enlisted the help of her neighbors and had a full meal already prepared. "I thought you were supposed to be taking it easy," he said, exasperated. "I supervised." "That counts as taking it easy." The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Maya stood on the porch in a navy blue dress, her hair styled in loose curls, holding a bottle of wine. She looked nervous and beautiful. "You look wonderful," Ethan said, then immediately worried that was too forward. But Maya just smiled. "Thanks. You clean up pretty nice yourself." Dinner was delightful. Margaret was in her element, telling stories and making both of them laugh. The food was incredible and the wine flowed freely. As the evening progressed, Ethan noticed Maya relaxing, the guarded expression she usually wore at the hospital melting away. After dinner, they moved to the living room for coffee and dessert. Margaret regaled them with stories from Ethan's childhood, much to his embarrassment and Maya's delight. "He was such a serious little boy," Margaret said. "Always reading, always thinking, but he had this soft heart. He once spent his entire allowance buying food for a homeless man he saw downtown. Grandma, please. It's true. And he volunteers at the children's hospital every Christmas, dressing up as Santa. Won't let them use his name or his company's name for publicity. He just does it because he cares." Maya looked at him with new appreciation. "That's really sweet." "It's nothing," Ethan said, feeling his face heat. "It's not nothing," Maya said softly. "It matters." As the evening wound down and Maya prepared to leave, Margaret suddenly clutched her chest. Ethan was at her side in an instant, panic flooding through him. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Maya was already in doctor mode, checking Margaret's pulse, asking questions. But then she noticed the older woman's eyes twinkling, and she sat back with a knowing look. "Margaret, that was not funny." Margaret laughed. I'm fine." But it got you two to stop dancing around each other for a moment. "Grandma." "Oh, hush, I'm old and I just had heart surgery. I can do what I want. Now listen to me, both of you. Life is short. Believe me, I know. And when you find someone special, someone who makes you feel alive, you don't waste time. You grab hold and you don't let go." She looked pointedly between them. "I see the way you look at each other. I'm old, not blind. So stop making excuses and give it a chance." "What's the worst that could happen?" Ethan and Maya stared at each other across the living room, both clearly mortified but also, if Ethan was honest with himself, a little relieved to have it out in the open. "I should go," Maya said finally. "I'll walk you to your car," Ethan offered. They walked in silence down the driveway, the night air cool and crisp. When they reached her car, Maya turned to face him. "Your grandmother is something else." "I'm so sorry about that. She has no filter." "Don't be sorry. She's right, actually. I do like you, Ethan. I have since that first day in her hospital room, but I meant what I said about not being ready." "I know, and I respect that, but maybe we could be friends in the meantime. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who enjoy each other's company." Maya considered this, then nodded slowly. "Friends." I think I can do friends." They exchanged phone numbers, and as Maya drove away, Ethan felt a lightness in his chest he hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't exactly what he wanted, but it was a start. Over the next few months, they fell into an easy friendship. They texted regularly, random thoughts and funny observations throughout the day. They met for coffee when their schedules aligned, which wasn't often given Maya's unpredictable shifts and Ethan's demanding schedule at Morrison Pharmaceuticals. Ethan found himself sharing things with Maya that he didn't tell anyone else. The pressure he felt trying to push the company in a more ethical direction when the board just wanted profits. His fear that he wasn't living up to his grandfather's legacy. His loneliness in a world where everyone seemed to want something from him. Maya, in turn, opened up about her broken relationship. She told him about the betrayal, about how she had ignored red flags because she wanted to believe in love, about how she was learning to trust herself again. "I gave so much of myself away in that relationship," she confided one afternoon as they sat in a small cafe near the hospital. "I lost track of who I was outside of being his girlfriend. I'm still figuring that out." "What have you discovered so far?" Ethan asked. She smiled. "That I actually like going to the movies alone. That I'm a terrible painter, but I enjoy it anyway. That I don't need someone else to validate my worth. For what it's worth, I think you're pretty incredible just as you are." "Thanks, Ethan. That means a lot coming from you." "Why from me specifically?" "Because you've never asked me for anything. You've never tried to change me or push me into something I'm not ready for. You're just here, present. It's rare and I appreciate it." What she didn't know was how hard it was for him sometimes, being just friends when he wanted so much more. But he meant what he said about no pressure. She was worth waiting for. The shift in their relationship happened gradually, so subtly that later neither of them could pinpoint exactly when friendship turned into something deeper. It was there in the way Maya started texting Ethan first thing in the morning, sharing her thoughts before the day began. In how Ethan found himself making decisions about his schedule based on when he might be able to see her. In the comfortable silences that stretched between them, no longer awkward but peaceful. 6 months after they met, Ethan invited Maya to a charity gala his company was hosting. It was a fundraiser for cancer research, and several major donors would be in attendance. "I know it's not really your scene," he said over the phone, "but I could really use a friendly face in the crowd. These events can be pretty stuffy." "Will I need to wear a fancy dress?" Maya asked. "Unfortunately, yes. It's black tie." "Then I'm in. I have a dress I've been waiting for an excuse to wear." The night of the gala, Ethan stood in the ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel, tugging at his bow tie and making small talk with board members and investors. He kept glancing at the entrance, watching for Maya. When she finally arrived, he forgot how to breathe. She was wearing a floor-length emerald dress that hugged her curves and brought out the warmth in her eyes. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, and she moved through the crowd with a grace that seemed effortless. "Wow," he said when she reached him. "You look stunning." "You don't look so bad yourself," she replied, straightening his already perfect bow tie. "Though you seem tense. Are you okay?" "Better now that you're here." He introduced her to various people throughout the evening, and he found himself feeling proud to have her by his side. She was intelligent and charming, asking thoughtful questions and genuinely engaging with everyone she met. Several board members commented on how lovely she was, and more than one person assumed she was his girlfriend. He didn't correct them. Midway through the evening, the band started playing and couples moved onto the dance floor. Ethan turned to Maya and offered his hand. "Would you like to dance?" She hesitated for just a moment, then placed her hand in his. "I'd love to." They moved together easily, and Ethan was hyper-aware of every point of contact. his hand on her waist, her palm pressed against his, the subtle scent of her perfume. "Thank you for inviting me tonight," Maya said softly. "I know I've been in my own head a lot these past months, working through things, but being here with you, it feels right. You're always welcome by my side, Maya. I hope you know that." She looked up at him, and something in her expression had changed. The walls she had carefully constructed were lowering, and what he saw in her eyes made his heart race. "Ethan, I need to tell you something." Before she could continue, a man approached them, interrupting the moment. "Ethan Morrison. I'm James Fletcher from Fletcher Investments. I've been hoping to speak with you about a potential partnership." Ethan wanted to tell the man to go away, that this conversation with Maya was infinitely more important than any business deal, but Maya squeezed his hand and stepped back. "Go ahead," she said. "I'll get us some drinks." He watched her walk away, frustration coursing through him. When he finally extricated himself from the conversation 15 minutes later, he found Maya on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. "I'm sorry about that," he said, joining her at the railing. "Don't be. This is your event. You need to schmooze. I'd much rather talk to you. What were you going to tell me?" Maya took a deep breath, and he could see her gathering her courage. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, about what I want, about what I'm ready for, and I realized something. I'm happy, Ethan. Really happy. For the first time in a long time, I wake up excited about the day ahead, and a big part of that happiness is you." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Maya, let me finish. I know I said I wasn't ready to date, that I needed time, and that was true. But somewhere along the way, while I was busy finding myself again, I also found you. Or maybe you found me. Either way, I don't want to just be friends anymore. I want more. If you still want that too." He reached for her hands, pulling her closer. "Are you kidding? I've wanted that since the day I met you. I've been waiting for you, Maya, and I'd wait forever if that's what it took. You don't have to wait anymore." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, giving her every chance to pull away, but she didn't. Instead, she rose on her toes and closed the distance between them. Their first kiss was soft and tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Then Maya's arms wrapped around his neck and the kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent and real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling for you, Maya Chen. Actually, I think I've already fallen." "I'm falling too," she whispered, "and it's terrifying and wonderful all at once." They stood there on the balcony, wrapped in each other's arms as the party continued inside. Later, Ethan would remember this as the moment his life truly began. Their relationship blossomed quickly after that night. They went on proper dates, holding hands in public and stealing kisses whenever they could. Maya met Ethan's business associates and friends, charming everyone with her warmth and intelligence. Ethan attended hospital functions with Maya, content to stand back and watch her in her element. Margaret was delighted, of course, taking full credit for bringing them together. "I knew from the start you two were perfect for each other," she would say whenever anyone would listen. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Both of them had demanding careers that didn't always align. Maya's shifts at the emergency room were unpredictable, and more than once she had to cancel plans because of a hospital emergency. Ethan's responsibilities at Morrison Pharmaceuticals meant long hours and frequent travel. Their first real fight happened 3 months into their relationship. Ethan had planned a romantic weekend getaway to wine country, booking a beautiful bed and breakfast and making reservations at the finest restaurants. But the night before they were supposed to leave, Maya was called in for an emergency surgery. "I'm so sorry," she said over the phone, exhaustion evident in her voice. "I know you put a lot of thought into this trip, but there was a multi-car accident on the highway and we're completely overwhelmed here." I understand, Ethan said, trying to keep the disappointment out of his voice. People need you. We can reschedule, right? Maybe next month. Sure. Next month, but when they hung up, Ethan found himself feeling frustrated. This was the third time in as many weeks that work had interfered with their plans. He understood the importance of her job, he truly did, but part of him couldn't help feeling like he was always coming in second. The next morning, he went to the hospital to bring Maya coffee and breakfast. He found her in the break room, still in her scrubs, dark circles under her eyes. "You've been here all night," he said, handing her the coffee. "Thank you for this. And yes, we lost one patient but saved 3 others. It was intense." She took a long sip of coffee, then looked at him more carefully. "You're upset." "I'm not upset. Ethan, I know you. Talk to me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I guess I just wish we had more time together. I feel like I'm always competing with your job for your attention." Maya set down her coffee, her expression serious. "Is that really how you feel?" "Sometimes, yes, and I know that's selfish. I know your work is important and saves lives, but I miss you." "I miss you too. But this is who I am, Ethan. This job, these patients, it's not something I can just turn off. When someone's life is on the line, I have to be there." "I know that, I do. I just wish there was a better balance." They stared at each other across the break room, the tension thick between them. Finally, Maya spoke. "I can't be with someone who's going to resent my career. I've been down that road before, and I won't do it again." "That's not what I'm saying. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your work. I would never ask that." "Then what are you asking?" "I don't know. I guess I'm just asking you to see it from my perspective sometimes, to understand that it's hard for me too when our plans fall through." Maya's expression softened. "You're right. I'm sorry. I get so focused on the hospital that sometimes I forget there are other people who need me too, people I care about just as much." She reached for his hand. "I promise to try harder to find balance, and to communicate better when I have to cancel plans. And I promise to be more understanding about your schedule. Your work is part of what makes you who you are, and I love who you are." They worked through it, learning to communicate better and make the most of the time they did have together. Ethan started keeping a sleeping bag and pillow in his car so he could nap in the on-call room when Maya had long shifts. Maya began blocking off certain days in her schedule as non-negotiable date nights, except for true emergencies. As summer turned to fall, their relationship deepened. They said, "I love you" for the first time on a quiet Sunday morning, tangled together in Ethan's bed as sunlight streamed through the windows. "I love you," Maya had whispered, tracing patterns on his chest. "I think I've loved you for a while now, but I was afraid to say it." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of being that vulnerable again. Afraid of giving someone the power to hurt me." Ethan had tilted her chin up so she was looking at him. "I will never hurt you intentionally, Maya. You have my word. I love you too, so much it sometimes scares me." They spent that whole day in bed, talking and making love and planning a future together. It was perfect, but that perfection was tested when Morrison Pharmaceuticals faced a crisis. One of their flagship drugs was showing unexpected side effects in a small percentage of patients. The board wanted to bury the data, arguing that the benefits outweighed the risks and recalling the drug would cost millions. Ethan knew it was wrong. He spent sleepless nights reviewing the data, consulting with researchers, trying to find a solution. Maya watched him struggle, offering support when she could, but recognizing this was a decision he had to make on his own. "What does your gut tell you?" she asked one night as they sat in his home office, papers spread across the desk. "That we need to recall the drug immediately and conduct a full review. That anything less is putting profit over people's lives. Then that's what you should do. The board will fight me on this. Some of them might even try to push me out. Maya came around the desk and wrapped her arms around him from behind. Then fight back. You're the CEO, Ethan. You have the power to make the right choice. And whatever happens, I'll be right here beside you. Her faith in him gave him strength. The next day, he called an emergency board meeting and announced the recall, despite fierce opposition. It was one of the hardest things he had ever done, standing firm in the face of anger and threats. But he knew it was right. The recall did cost the company millions, and 3 board members resigned in protest. But it also reinforced Morrison Pharmaceuticals' reputation as an ethical company that put patients first. Within 6 months, their stock price had recovered, and Ethan's leadership was stronger than ever. Through it all, Maya was his rock. She celebrated his victories and comforted him through the difficult moments. She reminded him why he was fighting when the pressure felt overwhelming. One evening, about a year into their relationship, Rachel invited Maya out for dinner and drinks. They hadn't had much one-on-one time since Maya and Ethan had gotten together, and Maya was looking forward to catching up with her best friend. They met at their favorite restaurant, a cozy Italian place with excellent wine and even better pasta. After they ordered, Rachel leaned across the table with a knowing smile. So, things with Ethan seemed pretty serious. Maya couldn't help the grin that spread across her face. They are. Rachel, I've never felt like this about anyone. He's kind and supportive, and he challenges me to be better. He makes me laugh, and he's there for me when I need him. I honestly can't imagine my life without him now. That's amazing, Maya. I'm so happy for you. You deserve this after everything you went through with that jerk. It's like night and day. With him, I always felt like I was chasing something, trying to prove I was enough. With Ethan, I just get to be myself. He loves me exactly as I am. Has he said it? That he loves you all the time. And the crazy thing is, I believe him. He shows me every day through his actions. Just last week, I had this horrible shift where we lost a patient, a kid, and I came home just broken. Ethan dropped everything, canceled a meeting with some important investors, and just held me while I cried. He didn't try to fix it or tell me it wasn't my fault. He just listened and loved me through it. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Do you think he's the one? Maya didn't hesitate. Yes, I think he might be the one. He told me he loved me, Rachel. Not just once, but over and over in a million different ways. And I love him just as much. What Maya didn't know was that Ethan had arrived at the restaurant to surprise her. He had finished his meetings early and thought he would join them for dessert. But as he approached their table, hidden partially by a decorative screen, he heard Maya's words clearly. He told me he loved me, she whispered to Rachel, emotion thick in her voice. And I believe him. After everything I went through, I didn't think I'd be able to trust like this again. But he's shown me what real love looks like. It's not grand gestures or empty promises. It's showing up every day, choosing each other, building something real together. Ethan froze, his heart swelling with emotion. Hearing Maya talk about him like that, about their relationship, about their future, it confirmed everything he had been feeling. She was it for him. She was the one he wanted to wake up next to every morning for the rest of his life. He quietly backed away from the table, pulling out his phone to text Maya instead. Finished early. Don't want to crash girls' night. Enjoy your dinner. Love you. He left the restaurant with a plan forming in his mind. He was going to marry Maya Chen. He just needed to figure out how to ask her. Over the next few weeks, Ethan worked in secret on his proposal. He wanted it to be perfect, meaningful, something that reflected who they were as a couple. He enlisted Margaret's help, who was thrilled to be included in the planning. I knew you'd end up together, she said, wiping happy tears from her eyes. From the moment I saw you two in that hospital room, I knew." "You did not," Ethan laughed. "You were barely conscious from the pre-op medication. A grandmother knows. Now, have you thought about the ring?" He had, actually. He had spent hours at jewelry stores, looking at diamonds and settings, but nothing felt quite right. Then he remembered the emerald dress Maya had worn to the gala, how stunning she had looked, how that color brought out her eyes. He had a custom ring made, a emerald-cut emerald stone surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum. It was unique and beautiful, just like Maya. Choosing the location for the proposal took more thought. He considered grand gestures like renting out a restaurant or proposing at some scenic overlook. But those didn't feel authentic to their relationship. He and Maya had built their love in quiet moments, in hospital hallways and coffee shops and lazy Sunday mornings. In the end, he chose the place where it all began. The hospital where they met, where Margaret had her surgery, where Maya had first captured his heart. He made arrangements with the hospital administration, calling in a few favors and making a generous donation to the cardiac wing. He planned it for an evening when he knew Maya would be finishing her shift. He enlisted Rachel's help to make sure Maya didn't leave work early or get called into an emergency surgery. When the day arrived, Ethan was more nervous than he had ever been, including the day he took over as CEO of Morrison Pharmaceuticals. He stood in the hospital garden, a beautiful green space that patients and staff used for quiet reflection. He had it decorated with soft string lights and her favorite flowers, white roses. Rachel texted him when Maya was on her way down. His heart pounded as he heard footsteps approaching. Then Maya appeared through the garden entrance, confusion written across her face. "Ethan, what's all this?" He took her hands in his, trying to steady his nerves. "This is where we met, this hospital. It was the worst day of my life because I thought I might lose my grandmother, but it was also the best day because I met you." "Ethan, what are you doing?" "I'm telling you a story, the story of us. Of how a chance encounter in a hospital corridor changed everything. Of how I heard you crying in the rain, and even though I didn't know you, I felt your pain. Of how you saved my grandmother's life, and in the process, you saved mine too." Tears were already forming in Maya's eyes. "You heard me that night, in the rain with Rachel." "I did. I was standing inside the entrance and I heard everything. I heard your pain and I wanted to fix it, even though I didn't know you. And then weeks later, when you walked into my grandmother's hospital room, I couldn't believe it was the same woman. The universe gave me a second chance to meet you properly." He released her hands and dropped to one knee. Maya gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Maya Chen, you are the strongest, most compassionate, most incredible woman I have ever met. You challenge me to be better, you support me when I stumble, and you love me in a way I never knew was possible. I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you make me. Will you marry me?" He pulled out the ring box, opening it to reveal the emerald surrounded by diamonds. Maya stared at it, tears streaming down her face. "It's an emerald," she said softly, "like my dress at the gala. That was the night everything changed, the night you told me you were ready for more. I never want to forget that moment." "Yes," Maya said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. I love you so much, Ethan Morrison." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying, he noticed they had an audience. Hospital staff had gathered at the garden entrance, clapping and cheering. Rachel was there too, filming the whole thing on her phone with tears running down her face. Margaret appeared in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse, beaming with pride. "About time," she called out. "I was starting to think I'd have to propose for you. Everyone laughed, and Maya ran over to hug the older woman. "Thank you for everything, Margaret. For raising an incredible man, and for being the reason we met." "All part of my master plan," Margaret said with a wink. That night, Meyer and Ethan celebrated with champagne and takeout in his apartment, neither of them wanting to share the evening with anyone else just yet. They sat on his couch, Maya's feet in his lap, the engagement ring catching the light every time she moved her hand. "I can't believe this is real," Maya said. "That we're engaged, that I'm going to marry you. Believe it. You're stuck with me now," she laughed. "I can think of worse fates." "Have you thought about when you want to get married?" Ethan asked. "I know you just said yes a few hours ago, but I'm curious what you're thinking." "Honestly, I don't want a long engagement. We're not kids, we know what we want. What do you think about next spring?" "That gives us about 6 months to plan." "Spring sounds perfect. What kind of wedding do you want?" Maya considered this. "Nothing too big or flashy. I want our close friends and family, good food, and a celebration that feels like us. What about you?" "I just want to marry you. Everything else is details." They spent hours that night planning and dreaming, talking about the life they would build together. They discussed children, where they would live, how they would balance their careers. It was the practical conversation of two people who had been together long enough to know each other's dreams and fears. "I want at least 2 kids," Maya said. "I grew up as an only child and I always wished I had siblings." "2 sounds good. Maybe 3 if we're not too exhausted by the first 2. "Your turn. Tell me something you want for our future." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then said, "I want to start a foundation, something that provides health care to underserved communities." "I've been thinking about it for a while, but talking to you about your work, seeing the difference you make every day, it's made me realize I want Morrison Pharmaceuticals to be about more than just profits. I want us to give back." Maya's eyes shone with pride and love. "That's a beautiful dream, Ethan, and I want to help however I can. Maybe I could even consult part-time once the foundation is up and running." "Really? You'd want to be involved, of course. We're a team now. Your dreams are my dreams." The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding planning balanced with their demanding jobs. Maya's parents flew in from San Francisco and immediately adored Ethan. Her father, a reserved literature professor, opened up over discussions about poetry and classic novels. Her mother, a mathematician, was impressed by Ethan's head for business and his obvious devotion to Maya. "He's good for you," Maya's mother told her one day while they were looking at wedding dresses. "You light up around him in a way I've never seen before." "He's the best thing that's ever happened to me, Mom. I didn't even know I could be this happy." They found the perfect dress, a simple but elegant design with lace sleeves and a flowing skirt. Maya felt like herself in it, not like she was playing dress-up or trying to be someone she wasn't. The wedding planning wasn't without its stresses. There were disagreements about the guest list, confusion with vendors, and the normal chaos that comes with planning a major event. But Maya and Ethan worked through each challenge together, never losing sight of what really mattered. At the end of the day, Ethan said during a particularly frustrating call with the florist, "We'll be married. Whether the centerpieces are roses or peonies doesn't change that." "You're right," Maya agreed, ending the call. "Let's elope instead. Don't tempt me." They didn't elope, of course. Margaret would have killed them. But they did simplify their plans, cutting the guest list down to close family and friends and choosing a beautiful but intimate venue, a historic mansion with gorgeous gardens. As spring arrived, bringing with it blooming flowers and warm sunshine, the wedding day approached. The night before, as per tradition, Maya stayed at her parents' hotel while Ethan remained at his apartment. Maya couldn't sleep, too excited and nervous and overwhelmed with emotion. She texted Ethan at 2 in the morning. "Are you awake?" His response came immediately. "Can't sleep. Too busy thinking about tomorrow. Same, I can't believe we're getting married. Any second thoughts? Not even one. You? Never. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Maya. I can't wait to make you my wife. I love you too. See you at the altar." The wedding day was perfect. The weather cooperated with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze. Maya walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her eyes locked on Ethan waiting for her. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, but it was the expression on his face that took her breath away. Pure love and devotion. They had written their own vows, and there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd as they spoke from the heart. "Maya," Ethan said, his voice strong despite the emotion behind it, "you came into my life at a moment when I needed you most, even though I didn't know it. You showed me what it means to truly love someone, to be a partner in every sense of the word. You inspire me every day with your strength, your compassion, and your unwavering dedication to helping others. I promise to support your dreams, to be your safe place to fall, to laugh with you in good times and hold you in difficult ones. I promise to love you fiercely and faithfully for all the days of my life." Maya had to take a moment to compose herself before speaking. "Ethan, loving you has taught me that real love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about showing up day after day, choosing each other even when it's hard. You've given me a safe space to be completely myself, to be vulnerable and strong and everything in between. You've shown me that trust can be rebuilt and that not all love ends in heartbreak. I promise to stand by your side through whatever challenges we face, to celebrate your victories and comfort you in defeat, to build a life with you that's full of joy and purpose and love. I promise to be your partner, your best friend, and your wife for as long as we both shall live." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan pulled Maya into his arms and kissed her deeply, to the cheers and applause of their guests. As they walked back down the aisle hand in hand, officially married, Maya felt like her heart might burst with happiness. The reception was everything they had hoped for. There was dancing and laughter, heartfelt toasts from Rachel and Ethan's best friend from college, and a surprising speech from Margaret that had everyone in tears. "I've lived a long life," Margaret said, standing with some difficulty but refusing any help. "I've seen a lot of love stories, some beautiful and some tragic. But watching these two find each other, seeing the way they look at each other, the way they bring out the best in one another, it gives me hope. Maya, you've been a blessing to our family from the moment we met you. You saved my life, literally and figuratively. And more importantly, you saved my grandson's life by showing him what real love looks like. Ethan, your grandfather would be so proud of the man you've become, of the woman you've chosen to spend your life with. To the happy couple, may your love continue to grow stronger with each passing day." As the night wound down and the guests began to leave, Maya and Ethan stole a quiet moment alone in the garden where they had first danced at the gala. "Hello, Mrs. Morrison," Ethan said, pulling her close. "I like the sound of that," Maya replied, resting her head on his chest. "Any regrets?" "Only that we didn't do this sooner." They swayed together in the moonlight, the sound of the party drifting out from the mansion. Maya thought back to that rainy night over a year ago when she had stood outside the hospital, heartbroken and lost, never imagining that her life was about to change in the most wonderful way. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, sensing her emotional state. "I'm thinking about how far we've come, how much has changed since we met. That night in the rain, I thought my life was ending. I couldn't see past the pain. But really, it was just the beginning." "Of what?" "Of everything. Of finding myself again. Of learning what real love looks like." of building a life I actually want to live rather than one I settled for. Ethan kissed her forehead. I know what you mean. Before you, I was so focused on the company, on living up to expectations, that I forgot to actually live. You reminded me what's important. They stayed there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms before finally heading inside to say goodbye to the last of their guests. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, exploring ancient cities and eating incredible food and making love in beautiful hotels. They talked about everything and nothing, solidifying the foundation of their marriage. When they returned home, they moved into a new house they had purchased together, a beautiful craftsman in a quiet neighborhood with enough space for the family they planned to have. Maya transitioned to a new position at the hospital, moving from the emergency room to a consulting role that offered more regular hours and less overnight shifts. It was a difficult decision, as she loved emergency medicine, but she and Ethan both agreed that if they wanted to start a family, she needed a more predictable schedule. Ethan followed through on his dream of starting a foundation. The Morrison Healthcare Initiative launched 6 months after their wedding, with the goal of providing free medical care and medications to underserved communities. Maya served on the board of directors, using her medical expertise to guide their programs. 1 year after their wedding, Maya discovered she was pregnant. She told Ethan by leaving the positive pregnancy test on his pillow with a note that said, "Ready to be a dad." Ethan's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her into his arms, tears streaming down his face, repeating "I love you" over and over. Margaret was equally thrilled, already planning nursery themes and buying tiny baby clothes. "I'm going to be a great grandmother," she kept saying. "I never thought I'd live to see this day." The pregnancy was relatively smooth. Maya experienced some morning sickness in the first trimester, but nothing too severe. Ethan was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying about her and the baby. "I'm a doctor," Maya reminded him when he tried to carry her up the stairs for the 3rd time that week. "I know what my body can handle. I know. I just want to take care of you. You do take care of me, every single day, but you have to let me be independent too, okay?" He learned to back off a bit, though he never stopped showing his concern in smaller ways. He made sure she ate properly, rubbed her feet when they swelled, and talked to her growing belly every night before bed. Their daughter was born on a sunny morning in September. The delivery was long and difficult, but Maya was strong and Ethan never left her side. When they finally placed their baby girl in Maya's arms, both parents broke down in tears. "She's perfect," Maya whispered, studying the tiny face. "She looks like you," Ethan said, his voice full of wonder. They named her Grace Margaret Morrison, after Ethan's grandmother who had brought them together. Margaret held her namesake for the first time and declared it the happiest day of her life. Parenthood was exhausting and challenging, and more rewarding than either of them had imagined. They took turns with late-night feedings, learned to function on minimal sleep, and fell even more deeply in love as they watched each other become parents. 2 years later, their son was born. They named him Daniel, and he had his father's dark hair and mischievous smile. Their family felt complete. As the years passed, Maya and Ethan built a beautiful life together. They raised their children with love and laughter. They supported each other's careers and dreams. They traveled when they could and created traditions for their family. They had disagreements and difficult days, but they always worked through them together. The Morrison Healthcare Initiative grew into one of the most respected healthcare charities in the country, providing free care to thousands of people each year. Maya eventually left hospital work entirely to run the foundation full-time, finding even more fulfillment in this role than she had in clinical medicine. Ethan stepped down as CEO of Morrison Pharmaceuticals when he turned 50, handing the reins to a carefully chosen successor who shared his values. He remained on the board but devoted most of his time to the foundation and his family. Margaret lived to see both of her great-grandchildren graduate high school, passing away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 98. At her funeral, Ethan spoke about how she had shaped his life, how her wisdom and love had guided him, and how bringing Maya into their lives was perhaps her greatest gift to him. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Maya and Ethan returned to the hospital garden where he had proposed. It looked much the same, though they had funded renovations over the years that had expanded it into a true healing space for patients and families. "You remember standing here 25 years ago?" Ethan asked, pulling Ma close, like it was yesterday. "I was so shocked and so happy I could barely speak. I was terrified you'd say no. Never. I knew even then that you were it for me." They stood there in the spring sunshine, gray threading through their hair now, but their love as strong as ever. Grace was in medical school, following in her mother's footsteps. Daniel was studying business, planning to eventually join the foundation's leadership. "We did good, didn't we?" Maya said softly. "We did better than good. We built something real and lasting. We created a family, a legacy of helping others, a love that never faded." "It's not over yet," Maya said. "We still have so many years ahead of us. And I can't wait for every single one of them as long as they are with you." As they walked back to their car hand in hand, Maya thought about how drastically her life had changed from that rainy night when she stood outside this same hospital, heartbroken and lost. She had been so convinced that love had failed her, that she would never be able to trust anyone again. But then Ethan had walked into her life, or rather, she had walked into his, and everything had changed. Their love story hadn't been the easiest or the simplest, but it had been real. They had worked for it, fought for it, chosen it every single day. And in the end, that was what mattered most. That evening, surrounded by their children and grandchildren who had surprised them with an anniversary party, Maya caught Ethan's eye across the room. He smiled at her, that same smile that had captured her heart all those years ago, and mouthed, "I love you." She smiled back, her heart full to bursting, and mouthed the words that had started it all, the words that she had whispered to Rachel not knowing he could hear, the words that had changed everything. "He told me he loved me, and he had never stopped.